from beautiful East Tennessee in the foothills of the Smoky Mountains. You're listening to the Sherry Voluntary Show, and I do appreciate you spending your time with me. And of course, Daniel, my producer extraordinaire. And today we have with us Mr. Shawn Jones, who is with Don't Comply, and they are doing Feed the Need 7, which you guys have heard about on this show before, and I'm sure on many others. So, welcome to the show, Shawn.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming. I'm sorry for all the technical difficulties. We had a little hiccup in the beginning, but all right. So, now, before we get into exactly what you're doing with Feed the Need, um, let's talk a little bit just about you and who you are and how you got involved with this project.
Let's see. This project, Feed the Need, this will be my fourth year to do it. And I met some friends, Sam and Eric, who were friends with Murdoch, and Murdoch's one of the founding members of Don't Comply.
From beautiful East Tennessee,
oh, hold on. You
are listening to the Sherry Voluntary Show.
You just popped up on my laptop.
Okay. It's been one of those nights, right? I mean,
yeah, and I'm not very tech savvy, so I met Murdoch and the Don't Comply gang through really some different activism that I was doing with trying to get fluoride out of the water supply in the city of Dallas, and overlap amongst the activist communities kind of just led me through one event after another. And that was probably about 6 months before my first Feed the Need, whenever I started meeting this gang. And, then I found out what they were doing, and it was just so awesome that I wanted to be a part of it. And I was fortunate some of the guys lived pretty close to me as well. So it made it really easy for me to, just come in and lend my truck, to help carry stuff and, have my son get involved with it as well. So it all just it was a pretty natural and easy click for me. Like I said, it's mostly overlap in other activism that I was doing.
So were you, I guess would you describe yourself as a libertarian? What would you call yourself?
Well, I'm actually the county chair here in Collin County, and I sit on the state legislative executive committee for the Libertarian Party.
As a fellow county chair, I won't hold that against you, regardless of whatever our flaws are.
Yeah. It's an interesting dynamic there for sure. And as I sit in my quarterly legislative meetings, me and my cohort, the other probably closest pure ANCAP as you can get in the room, just kind of have to giggle and say we're a minority and a minority party. So that makes us a really small yet obnoxious voice, and an obnoxious voice that needs to still maintain relevance in the party for sure. Somebody's got to continue to remind people that taxation is theft. And it seems to be the quest for power, glory, and winning sometimes gets in the way of the more pure principled message. So I kind of accepted that's my role.
When I was involved in the party, I always thought it was funny when people who would tell me anarchists need to leave the party and they had taxation as theft on their profile picture or something. You do realize that that's an anarchist position. If your little minarchism thing that you want to do would require taxation. It's just, I find it funny a lot of the time. But anyways, so that's how you got involved with, and so let's explain the relationship between Don't Comply and Feed the Need, because Don't Comply is a website, correct?
It's a website. Well, it's an organization with a website. Okay. Don't Comply's, general theme is we don't comply to immoral laws. Participate in civil disobedience. When something is immoral and unjust, it's not only your right, but it's somewhat your responsibility to take a stand and object these immoral laws. And sometimes, it just means that you have to go out there and get in people's face and you have to break the law. Sometimes you have to break the law in order for people to even be aware that it's an immoral law in place.
Right.
No, absolutely.
Absolutely. just break the law. Daniel's all for breaking the law.
Well, no, I mean like the ideal, like if there's very little you can do within the system that will change things, but breaking the law in a way that they can't come back and say you're wrong. Like when they come back and say you're wrong for feeding the homeless, they're saying the law is wrong. They're not really saying that you're wrong.
Right.
So that's.
I love I think our mutual friend Patrick and Murdoch, they did a video for this Feed the Need 7, and towards the end of it, Patrick is showing these homeless people that, you know, he's talking about how a lot of people, even Republicans, have forgotten what the Second Amendment is for, and that is to make sure that you can do the right thing regardless of what the government says. So I think that's a really important point that is missed a lot of times in just the general talking about laws and obedience to them and whether they're beneficial, is that the laws are supposed to serve to make, you know, life better for people and protect, you know, maybe property, whatever. But when you get to these things where you're stopping people from helping other people, it's just immoral. Like I have this little wand of statism that makes it okay when the government does it. So it's just baloney. There's no reason that the government should be involved in stopping one person from helping another.
Well, and the fact that you guys carry when you're feeding the homeless, it makes it so obvious as to what's going on that the cops will drive by and then just decide that maybe this fight isn't worth having. Like maybe we don't want to shoot somebody for feeding homeless people when they're also going to shoot back. Like that's amazing.
The show of force.
You guys are just the most fantastic organization, between the guillotines at the State House, all of it. Like I love you guys.
I'm a proud co-builder of Slicey Boy. That was a fun thing to build.
Yes,
and that is his name.
So we was going to get into that maybe a little bit later, but that is one of the things that you guys did, is the guillotine that you marched down to the courthouse. What are some of the other things you've done? I know there was, I think Patrick did a passport thing where
that was me as well.
Was you too? Okay.
Yeah, that was. And matter of fact, my passport picture, I am actually wearing the chains in.
Right.
That's awesome. You guys are amazing.
One of my more fun. That was one of my more fun experiences. Fortunately and unfortunately, the girl at the post office was so easygoing and rolled with it. She was such a good sport that it almost took some of the fun out of it, because she had like no antagonism in her at all. Like I couldn't believe she let me take pictures with the chain on.
Right.
But Patrick, yeah.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No. It was a super fun thing. You know, Patrick and Murdoch both have some great ideas.
So my question is, did they issue the passport with the chains on them?
What's that?
Did they issue your passport with the chains in the picture?
Yes.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. The place I've gotten passports at before is very strict about everything, so that's really cool that happened. But are there any other things, like those are some of the ones that are more well known? What kind of other activism have you guys done? Anything to that level before?
Oh man, I don't know. Like the guillotine's a pretty high bar to set. I definitely haven't participated in anything like that big and in your face.
And it was an actually sharp guillotine, right? Like it wasn't. Was it?
Oh yeah.
So.
It could mess somebody up. That's for sure. It could maim somebody.
Right.
It could do some damage to a status. Yeah. I'm sure.
Right. Yeah. So what kind of?
Not that we would ever want to do that, but just saying, it's a healthy warning.
You know, that's the whole point behind the Second Amendment, is that sometimes violence is the answer. Like we're nonviolent, right? I know you believe in the non-aggression principle, so do I. And so we want to avoid violence at all costs, because it won't always work out the way we think it will, the way we want it will. That's why I always think it's funny when I hear, Bubba's and other people talking about we got to take this country back and it's going to be another civil war, and like it's not going to work out for you. You don't it probably won't work out the way you want it to. So nonviolent means are the best, but sometimes that's the avenue you have to take when you're pushed to no other alternatives. But I don't think we're there yet. So what kind of what kind of reaction did you get from a lot of the people there? Did anyone with their minds changed? Were any minds changed by that stunt?
I don't I don't know that minds were changed as much as some were kind of reaffirmed that um, that there's good people out there trying to do things more so. I don't think out of the probably 100 or so, I don't know what the actual count was. I'll just call it 100 people. I think most of them had kind of their own preconceived ideas when they got there, and there was some towards the end there was some interesting discrepancies. There was a particular group of people, one who used to be my friend, uh, who took exception to the Declaration of Individual Independence.
Oh, really?
Um, yeah, because it failed to mention and give proper guidance and authority to God, and so he was he was a little butthurt by that.
Right.
Um,
It,
and but I mean, I think for the most part, we had Fox 4 News was there, and I want to say that was in large part thanks to Matt Short's connections. They did a fantastic, like it was like 56 full seconds on the evening news, where they talked about jury nullification, which was only part of why we were there, but it was a big part, and a lot of the people that were involved with making the guillotine, like myself, are big into jury nullification as a great way to keep humans out of cages. And so from that aspect, it was fantastic. As a libertarian in the Texas Libertarian Party, got a ton of shit for it.
Yeah, no, I would say
Um,
if you can get the idea of jury nullification in front of potential jurors, there's nothing really, there's no higher cause. There's That's such a hard thing to pull off in this day and age that just convincing people that they can go, I don't agree with this law, I'm going to say not guilty.
mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
Right.
We're at a point
mhm.
where the laws are so out of touch with what most people believe that all we need to do is convince jurors that they don't have to agree with the law and they can just say not guilty.
Right. It's sort of like what you said about your friend being tied up about God not being mentioned in this, and so many people in the United States do that. They believe that the authority of the state comes from the authority of on high, of whatever God they believe in, mostly Christian. So I think that's a real problem that people have, is that we're not saying, at least I'm not saying, that when I talk about politics or whatever, I don't talk about any kind of faith generally that I have, just because it's not relevant to politics to me. It's not relevant to um, what I should be telling you to do and how to live your life. Of course, we view politics in a completely different way. I would say we're probably, I don't know, I'm anti-politics in most cases. So it's sort of, it's like two people speaking different languages trying to talk to each other, because sometimes you have to do that, I guess. Like knowing the Constitution, even though I don't respect it as a document of that I would guide my life by, it's important because it's a way to communicate to other people. So
Yeah, and
that's really good.
I would take the teachings of the New Testament to say that if it comes down to a question between what's right and what people believe is church doctrine, you should always go with what's right. So, you know, when people go, well, oh my goodness, you're going against the Bible. Well, I'm feeding people, or
Like,
I'm stopping people from getting harmed. Like the problem here is not with helping people. The problem is with whatever led you to believe that you shouldn't help them.
right. Yeah, which is often the law in the first place.
Well, and I think I've come to the belief that in the last several years, most people don't help um, because they feel that's what their taxes do. I mean, I've had people flat out tell, that's what I pay my taxes for. Like they don't. Um,
Right.
it, it's a lazy cop out, and a reason why I think most people are willing to pay most taxes, even though if you ask almost anybody on the street, they will be able to give you at least one, two, three, a dozen taxes that they actually object to. But they don't object to them enough to be willing to pay out of their own pocket for the stuff that they do want to socially
Right. And
subsidize.
then you have people,
You know, that
yeah,
go
that
ahead.
people that would call themselves conservatives who absolutely are correct in not wanting their tax dollars to go to subsidize abortions, whatever. That's they find that morally reprehensible, but they're perfectly okay with subsidizing the war machine that murders, children in other countries. So there's certainly a twisting of people's morality, and that's a state function. That's what they do. They twist what normal people would agree is, maybe we shouldn't be doing these things. Maybe we don't need to go to violence. But once they've done it, people have their support behind it because they really truly believe that the state is going to protect them and help them, especially when it's theirs. The United States government has done a really good job of personalizing the belief in authority to, and hand in hand with Christianity, unfortunately.
Yeah, but like for decades we had church-sponsored hospitals that are now no longer charity hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
They used to exist to provide health care, and they provided fantastic health care. And the one particular shining star in the healthcare industry today is like St. Jude's Children's Hospital that takes no government money. You get these hospitals that if they operate charity only, people support them. It's only when they think that the government's going to step in that nobody wants to give because they're like, oh, you're already stealing from me to do that. Why should I add to it?
Right.
But like Presbyterian Hospital and all the Catholic hospitals and all the charity hospitals that existed in this country for just, since the country's existed have basically gone away or become for-profit hospitals since government got involved.
Right. So,
They've been regulated out of most of that. It's become increasingly expensive to run those type of operations and get through all the bureaucracy, to where they had to change the model. And in the early 70s is, I believe, when the U.S. government decided. Before then, insurance was all insurance operated more as a nonprofit. Um, Type basis. It wasn't a fully for-profit industry. Once it went to a fully for-profit industry, the hyperinflation of all those products once again made it, the cost of running the hospital goes up exponentially. So you take that hyperinflation, then you take the overregulation, and it's, that same system and model for government monopolies, is maintained in a lot of other areas. And flip kind of back to what's going on with Feed the Need right now. And Dallas had a real nasty early freeze about 3 weeks ago, and way colder than we normally are at this time of year. And the city of Dallas shut down churches from being able to let people in, and made all of the homeless that needed shelter go to the former Senator Kay Bailey Hutchinson Convention Center downtown. And I've had several liberal friends, they can't believe why and don't understand. Ironically, it's the democratically controlled city government of Dallas that is doing it. But I had to explain, if the churches help and show that you don't need government, the government can't continue to tax you for a service it's not providing.
Well, and they can't decide who wins and loses and who gets help and who doesn't. If charities decide, then the government doesn't, and the government wants to be the only one deciding who gets to help, who gets help, and who gets to help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's interesting that Joel Osteen, who I'm not a fan of, and I made a lot of fun of during the flooding that happened down in Texas a couple of years ago, when he didn't open his church and people gave him so much grief about that. And yet when the government prevents churches from helping, then we're just supposed to go, oh, well, that's okay. You're doing it for their benefit. So I think it's just there's such a twisted view of what government is supposed to do in people's lives, and I don't think it has any purpose in people's lives. But even those who want a little bit don't want that. You would think they wouldn't want that, where you're stopping people from actually getting help because they're going to the wrong place or whatever. So
Yeah, a couple of years ago, we had some good friends that decided they were going to help with one of the hurricanes, and they loaded up some trailers and they went down, and they had to sneak around the FEMA check stops
right,
to make sure that they could get to where the people needed help. That FEMA was trying to stop people from going in to help if they weren't authorized to help.
right.
And so, like, to hear them talk, it was pretty amazing. And they were like, the churches are doing amazing things, and you just have to work the system and
Right.
figure out your way around the bureaucracy so you can go and make a difference.
Mm.
Because government exists to stop that.
Our friend who went had said that when he got to where FEMA wasn't where he eventually ended up yet, and he said he's an atheist, and he said I just had to hand it to. I have a whole new respect for the churches in this country because they were there, they were doing the work that needed to be done, and once the government got there, he said all you could hear was chainsaws in the air at first, cutting down trees and getting people, back where they needed to be. And then once the government got there, it just got quiet. Like all the actual work stopped because the government wants to come in and then tell everybody what to do because they don't believe in that spontaneous order that people can actually figure out for themselves what needs to be done and how to do it and go about doing that. So, but you guys aren't like that. So tell us a little bit about what's going on with Feed the Need, what you'll be doing, and then what you need and how people can help.
This is year 7. It originally started, Dallas had passed a city ordinance where you couldn't feed the homeless to the extent that you couldn't walk out of a McDonald's and hand somebody a hamburger. That was
Wow.
considered a finable offense. And over the years, they have lessened that to where I think technically now the only thing, the law that we're primarily breaking is that we didn't pay for permission to feed as many
Right.
people as we're going to feed. So they have come off of their shit stain attitude a little bit, but it's still a control mechanism. But so what we try to do is, obviously raise winter clothes is a big thing, shoes and denim for men, particularly. A lot of hygiene kits and feminine hygiene products. We try to take everybody with let them go with at least one hot meal. Usually, the more volunteers we've had, we end up having leftovers a lot of times. So we're actually able to send some people with some to-go containers with some food. And people bring, dried snack bar, individually wrapped snacks and things that they can, put in their bag and carry for later. And then towards the end, we give out sleeping bags, and that's probably one of the biggest. It's financially it's the biggest item, even though they're only about. You can get them at Academy for like $7.99, $8.99, because you do want the lightweight sleeping bags. They're already generally sleeping in layers, so really the windproofing outer shell is kind of what you're looking for. You don't need it Gore-Tex bulky. And then we also have 2 years ago, I think, is when they bought some micro tents, and they probably 4 inches by 4 inches, wide and about 24 inches long. And they're little 2-man tents. And so we go back at the end of the night as well. We'll circle back up after dark and walk around through the community and try to find people sleeping on the ground and set up tents for them.
That's awesome.
So and the Dallas police usually send some undercovers over and mill around amongst us. And they'll, do their hourly drive-bys. I know last year one of them was very generous, wove out of his way across the street to splash me with a mud puddle. I thought that was very special. It's get special treatment. And last year we had some fantastic volunteers bring their barber trailer
Nice.
up and drove like an hour and a half north to us, and we're able to like clean cuticles, cut nails,
Nice.
give haircuts, and just give some people a little bit of that feeling of human dignity back.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
the personal hygiene stuff, the stuff that we all really take for granted. If I want to take 3 showers in a day because I worked really hard and kept getting dirty, I don't have to think about
Right.
it. I don't have to think about soap and shampoo.
We have a friend here in Knoxville, Garland, who runs a charity that um, Laundry Love is what it's called, and it just helps the working poor basically come and be able to do their laundry, because a lot of times these people, even homeless people, will have a job, but they might lose it because they can't keep up the hygiene that they need to be able to do these jobs. So it's really bars entrance to them maybe getting back on their feet sometimes if they don't have a way to do that. So that's and just the gosh, I know sometimes how good I feel after I've been like, working really hard or something, and I just get a good shower and I feel like a new person. I can't imagine what that does to lift the spirits of someone who is not, not on their in their best time of life, and getting able to have that, and just that people care for them, like knowing that someone cares for you sometimes is more valuable than anything you can have. So I really appreciate that. That's a really I
Yeah.
think valuable thing to do for people.
And the idea that you guys in Dallas are willing to stand up and show up armed to make sure that you can feed the homeless. You've done what they consider to be the ultimate disrespect to the system, but they won't back you down because you're standing up for them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big deal. But like the guys here, the Laundry Love, what they do is they feed people and they do their laundry. That's pretty amazing. People who are feeling down about
Right.
themselves can come in and get a meal and clean clothes and then be able to go to work the next day and not, they may be homeless, but they're not dirty and they're
Right.
not hungry.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was going to ask, that's it, about Texans. I find it really interesting because so many Texans seem to really pride themselves on their love of freedom. So I wonder how they can abide. Why aren't more people in the area upset that the cops are stopping people, and that the city councilor or whoever else is stopping people from performing charitable acts? I mean, we have, instances all around the country where the government comes in and pours bleach on food so that people can't have it, or arrests the people handing out the food to homeless people, and Americans stand by and let that happen because they didn't get the right permission. So how do Texans, like, you live there, you know those people, like, how did they do that?
Well, it's not the same Texas I grew up knowing. I can tell you that much. I can tell you that much. Like I was a secession fan since I
The
was
Republic
probably
of
like 8
Texas.
years old. Yes, long live the Republic. Um, I've since lessened that because I have zero faith that the idiots in control of this state could do any more or less damage than the idiots in DC. So now that's kind of died. But there is Texans have freedom for their guns, but I would still say that the there's a love of authority too.
Mm-hmm.
The bootlicker
It's
contingent.
there that is one term you could use, for sure. Uh, trying to actually be polite. Um,
I don't know how to
I
do that
don't.
anymore.
No, fair enough. It's I'm in one of those moods where I'm trying to be polite. Um, I don't know how so many people stand by and um, ignore the empirical data of what's going on around them.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a interesting conversation with a Texan coworker of mine the other day, and he was in the Marine Corps, and it one and I give him shit because he claims to be very pro Second Amendment, but he's also very pro Trump. So I always like to ask him for my bump stocks and my suppressors. I remind him of that almost all the time. And I was like, so, how do you resolve the fact that the man has already instituted more anti-gun legislation than Obama did in 8 years, and he's not through his first 4? Nobody really needs those, and it's still better than the alternatives. Then he seems to have some. I'm not really sure what's going on. He referred to himself as a slave in the Marine Corps, and I was like, well, you volunteered to go, right? Like I looked at him and point blank said, you cashed a check to kill brown kids, right? Nobody made you. And so he backed off the slave statement really quick. And then our conversation goes to my next antagonistic statement was the new mandate that they're trying to make it illegal to put Cody Wilson's blueprints, and others like it out on the internet. And the bootlicker says to me, that's a matter of national security. Somebody could kill the president with one of the guns, and that can't happen. And I said, dude, what happened to the fucking Constitution?
He's going to be shocked when he finds out that fertilizer and diesel fuel are both readily available.
Well, my favorite statement after this, and the point that I've no longer been able to talk to him at all and just have to ignore him if I see him, is, I didn't join the Marine Corps to protect the Constitution.
Wow.
And then all you joined was for a paycheck and to fucking kill kids.
So
wow.
Because
as I recall,
you didn't even have
my enlistment oath involved protect and uphold the Constitution.
Right. Isn't that what the Oath Keepers are about? Like keeping that oath that they swore to?
Yeah, I mean, I regret joining the military, but we definitely agreed to uphold the Constitution.
I mean, and that I can, while it was never my calling, I can at least, I was, and until I read Spooner, I was a constitutionalist, and not that I ever believed that it was the perfect document, but I certainly, and I still maintain that if we went back to the original Constitution, I would have so much fucking freedom, I wouldn't know what to do with it. So I probably wouldn't even know how to get to the next deconstructed level, because I would just be like, my mind would be blown that I would be left the fuck alone so much.
Right. This is good enough.
Well, and it wouldn't be eventually, but it would be my son's, it would be the next generation to deconstruct past the rest of it. But I can understand somebody seeing that document and naively and altruistically reading it for what it was originally intended. And I do believe, the founders weren't all stellar human beings, and, they were still men of power and influence. The ideas in there, are fundamentally, a lot of them are really good, in your basic Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
I can understand why somebody would join the military to protect that. When this former Marine told me that had no part of his equation, I was actually speechless. Right. And that does not happen very often, but it was like there was such dumb fuckery to the statement that I was just like, I don't even know what to do with that. What do you mean?
He was actually honest about why he did. Like, so many of them.
I joined the Army because I hadn't eaten in 2 weeks. I hadn't had a meal in 2 weeks. And so I was like, well, I can join the Army and they'll feed me. And so I did that. But that was at the end of the longest period of peace in the history of in the United States. And if I'd had the advice of people who knew better, I wouldn't have done it. But so I get the joining the military to eat, to have a meal, to have a contract to get money for college or whatever. But what they don't tell you is that in exchange for your soul, they're telling you to kill people.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to do what you're told. You've given up your rights to be anything. And they pretend it's for freedom, but it's to go protect poppy fields, and it's to enforce the will of the elite overseas, and you're not protecting anybody's freedom. You're not protecting the Constitution.
Right.
All you're doing is extending American power overseas.
Yeah, it's the lie that they sell, and that's always what politicians do: is they sell the lie that we really need you, and it's your duty, that they're duty bound to protect their country. And I always, when I talk to my children about this, said, look, if someone's attacking your home, you'll know when it's time. You'll know when it's time to take up arms and defend your area, where you live, your community. Until then, it's not your business, or if you ally with someone and you're actually trying to protect people, that's a lot easier line. But now the state has convinced people that we have to protect ourselves by ruling the world, by policing the world, and doing things that they ought not be doing. But they've learned to sort of just shrug off, well, they did this bad thing, but it must have been for a good reason. Just like they hate Chelsea Manning or Edward Snowden, because dang it, they let us know the right thing, but people got hurt. But when people get hurt every single day just by the operation of the United States
And
military abroad.
nearly 1 million people have been killed by the Americans overseas
Yeah.
in defense of our freedoms in places where our freedom shouldn't be.
Right. How'd they get there?
It is the constant paranoia and arrogance of the way the system works. If I were to live my life the way the government military works, where they're basically, the best defense is a good offense, and we're going to hit them before they hit us, and even if we don't have empirical proof of it. If I, as a father, told my son, who's 13, I was like, man, if you even think somebody's going to hit you, just fucking slug them. Don't even give them a chance. Don't ask their name. If you even think for a second that they may do something to you, hit them first.
If someone named Dave,
I would have my child taken away
if
from me.
someone named Dave threatens
I
you,
would be
go kill
considered-
everybody else named Dave in the world.
And their
Right,
families.
yeah.
Make sure you get Dave's family
Make sure
too.
that you're there for
Because they had
for
some
generations, so that it's the difference between I forget the two words now. What is it? I forget. Anyways, to get a little bit back on topic here with that, just talking about the Feed the Need that you guys are doing. What are some of I know there's a way that people can donate money to help you do that, and to help, if nothing else, even if you guys showed up and there were no homeless people there, it would at least show the government that you mean business, and that you're willing to step up and do things for your community, and that should inspire other people in the community. And it's a shame when it doesn't, but I hope it does. So what's the link that people can donate to the Feed the Need 7?
We've got a donation link at don'tcomply.com.
Put that in the show notes.
And then, man, if I was more tech savvy, I would probably be able to. As soon as this is over, I will send you a hard link to it as well. But I think they set one direct donation on the web page.
Great. And is there anything else that we should know about this, and or anything else you'd like to talk about you guys are doing, or?
I don't know what we're gonna do next. There's a couple of us who have a fun college campus idea. That kind of we started about it's been at least 6 or 9 months, and just kind of backburnered. Life seems to have kicked everybody's ass in 2019 in large regard. I know personally it has, and I've talked to a lot of people as well that 19 seems to have been a rough year for people in general. I have no doubt with 2020 coming up that we'll have something new and interesting to get into. I have somewhat begrudgingly volunteered to run for the state legislature's position again. So if for no other reason, for me in my deeply red district, to take an opportunity to remind the Republicans that, hey, they're being run by a bunch of gun grabbers, and oh, by the way, your public school is socialist, so stop claiming that you don't like socialism because you're benefiting
Right.
from it.
Yeah.
So those are I like to troll them a little bit with that.
And all the love to our friend Patrick, who's had quite a year.
Yeah. So with
Indeed.
that, Shawn, thanks so much for coming on and talking to us about this. And we really admire what you guys are doing, and we hope to build that. I know it's inspired us in our community to try and sort of build that same sort of activism and the things that we think we can do in our community to do that. So I really appreciate it. And until next time, guys, peace.
Thank you very much. Great having you guys. Seeing you guys. Yeah. All right.